Oh, I'm so excited. Donald Trump is now talking about California's high-speed rail to nowhere, which I've been talking about and writing about extensively since this first came into fruition in 2008. I write about it in Climate Cult. I can't wait to share in just a moment because, on the one hand, it's hilarious. On the other hand, it's a horrible waste of money. And thank God Donald Trump's getting involved for such a time as this, because I believe there is so much waste, so much fraud, so much abuse, probably criminal activity behind the scenes, and federal taxpayer dollars have been used to build this bullet train to nowhere. Again, stick around. I'll talk about that. I'm also going to talk about a recent post I made at briansussman.com and on my Facebook page, Brian Sussman Show. This has to do with USAID. I'm so glad that this is making the news. I've been critical of this organization for a long time. It's a waste of money. We'll talk about that. And the Department of Education. Finally, someone's talking seriously about closing it down. Okay, let's go there first. The Department of Education. You bring that up around a liberal or, just a middle of the road, uninformed person, and they say, "What, aren't you for education?" Well, of course we're for education. But the Federal Department of Education educates no one. The education is left up to the states and the local school districts. This is a bureaucracy that in 2022 had a budget of $700 billion, actually $673 billion. And they educate no one. This is an organization that was established by Jimmy Carter. But that guy did, in his 4 years, he did so much damage. But here are the four basic principles of the Department of Education. Now, I'm going to read these to you. You tell me if the Department of Education is fulfilling any of these things. And by the way, for those of you who are watching, I've got my GOP coffee mug. Okay, establishing policies on federal financial aid for education and distributing as well as monitoring those funds. So that's one of their four pillars. They're supposed to establish policies on federal financial aid for education and then distribute the funds. $673 billion a year to run this thing. It's gargantuan. Has 10,000 employees. Collecting data on America's schools and disseminating the research. Okay, America's schools are failing. Really, this should be left up to the states because the states are in charge of the education and each state varies in terms of its ability to teach. I got one more thing I'm going to get to in just a moment, but this is number 3, focusing national attention on key issues in education. What the? No, this is a bureaucracy that's got to go bye-bye. Prohibiting discrimination and ensuring equal access to education. Those are the four pillars. $673 billion budget in 2022. It's come down since, but I guess it varies from year to year. Here's the deal. The Department of Education, as I've said now for I think the third or fourth time, they educate no one. If you want to know the real I heard Betsy DeVos, who I really enjoy. She was Donald Trump's first Department of Education person. Betsy DeVos, I believe her family made all their money in Amway. So they're great business people and super conservatives, and I like her a lot, but she's telling us, what's wrong with education in the United States of America. She skipped one thing. And I know this because some of you watching, some of you listening are teachers, or you know of a teacher, just as I do. They'll tell you the same thing. Teachers have lost control of the classroom. A student can get up in the middle of the class, flip the teacher off, cuss the teacher out, threaten the teacher, and there's no repercussions other than, maybe get sent to the principal's office. Maybe in some school districts, you'll get suspended. but I rather doubt it. Teachers have no control in the classroom. And I know from many of my teacher friends who, for example, have taught in California in the public schools, if you do call a student out for poor behavior, you better watch your language, because you could be slapped with a complaint that could ruin your future as a teacher in the state of California. I'm sure it's the same way in blue states throughout the country. Teachers have no control. We have to allow our teachers to have the authority and the respect they are due so they can do the job according. I don't know who's going into teaching anymore. I do not feel these are our best and brightest. For one thing, the pay in most school districts is not that great. Plus, you've got to put up with all this garbage from the students. Who would want to do this? Department of Education, I pray that this department goes bye-bye. Again, it's only been around since 1979. Actually put in place when Ronald Reagan was president. He inherited it from Jimmy Carter. It was law by then. He couldn't do anything about it. So it's not like this has been around forever. We got to get rid of it. Department of Education. Now let's talk about USAID. I posted this again, as I mentioned, on my various media sites. This was not meant to be a humorous post. But 2023, these are the actual words from USAID. They stated, through the agency's flagship Clean Cities Blue Ocean program. Now, I was drawn to this because obviously, I write a lot about climate, write a lot about the environment. So this really got my attention. USAID. Through the agency's flagship Clean Cities Blue Ocean program under the Save Our Seas initiative, they're responding to the ocean plastic pollution crisis by working with partner countries, Asia, the Pacific Islands, Latin America, the Caribbean, to address these challenges, to provide the tools and resources so that women, okay, here's the deal, so that women can participate and advance in local circular economies. So USAID, generally speaking, when you watch CNN, when you watch MSNBC, when you watch these liberal outlets, they're trying to make you believe that if you get rid of USAID, that is critical to the charitable givings of the people of the United States of America. And if you're not going to support USAID, if you're going to cut this program out, shame on you, because you don't have a charitable bone in your body. Listen, I'm all for charity. But the problem is, this money goes to, there's no other way to describe it. I could use a worse word, but I'm just going to say crap. There's nothing of value that USAID does. Occasionally we drop off relief supplies, but I would be willing to bet, if you were to track those relief supplies that we do dole out, they're stolen, they're turned around and resold on the black market. Any construction materials we may bring to a particular locale so that they can fix up after a disaster of some sort, I'll bet those particular pieces of equipment, those construction materials, are resold on the black market. There's just no accountability. But let me just go into this. This is one small piece of the USAID pie. It's a $50 billion a year boondoggle. This is $50 billion a year. You know what we could do with $50 billion a year? USAID, what if we just said, okay, we're going to put aid into the United States. We want to take care of homelessness once and for all. We're going to get every homeless person a place to live. According to the Federal Housing and Urban Development Department, we could house every homeless person in the United States for $20 billion a year. Those are 2021 statistics, but $20 billion a year, we could house everybody. Now, I'm not saying that's the solution, but if we wanted to just do that, okay, just do that. Forget about drug rehab, forget about all these other things. But if we just wanted to do that, we could do it for $20 billion. Forget the $50 billion that we're sending all over the world that doesn't probably help very many people at all. For $20 billion, we could house everybody in the United States. See, this is how you can start to look at the numbers and realize we are wasting so much money. That's what's beautiful about this. By the time Elon Musk gets done with going through the books, by the time we cut out some of these ridiculously bloated bureaucracies, then it's not going to make a bit of difference when we finally get our Social Security money tax-free. You know, for those of us who receive Social Security, I pay taxes already. This money is being double taxed. The government doesn't need it. All they do is waste it. Getting back to this piece. So how is USAID making way for clean cities, blue oceans, and saving our seas, I ask? Here are 6 word-for-word examples. I went to the USAID website. These are word-for-word examples. Creating opportunities for women to establish and expand their waste business. Now that wasn't very well written, but I didn't write it. That's from their website. Creating opportunities for women to establish and expand their waste businesses. So this would be like, a woman's got a recycling business, a woman is a junk hauler, whatever. This would create opportunities for women to establish or expand these businesses. Now, can I just ask you this question? What does this have to do with clean cities, blue oceans, and save our seas? This is a waste of money. Now this was only a $53 million project. 53 million. The budget is 50 billion, but I'm just giving you an example of what kind of garbage, pun intended, is in this particular program, including gender in the local government planning process. That's DEI on steroids. This is what we're trying to implement around the world. We're going around the world saying, listen, you know what? You need to, to get your ship uprighted, to make your organization work, you need to include gender in the planning process. Promote the safety of women in the waste ITMA. Promote the safety of women in waste. That's what it says. They mean in the waste business. Strengthening women's agency and confidence to be recycling champions. $53 million so we can strengthen women's agency and confidence to be recycling champions, word for word. Designing waste system solutions based on gender-inclusive research? What does this have to do with giving aid to people who are poor? Giving aid to people who have been hit by a hurricane? Right-sizing technology and facilities for women. Again, 2024 Biden administration allotted $53 million for this absolutely stupid plan. Oh, but wait, there's more. This has nothing to do with Save Our Seas, but this has to do with advancing diversity, equity, and inclusion in Serbia's workplaces. This is USAID. You know how much we spent on that? $1.5 million. $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland. I tell you right now, I love the DEI musical in Ireland. This is an insult to anybody who's Irish. Sure, bigora. $2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam. Okay, do you realize Vietnam, it's a communist country. $2.5 million for electric vehicles in Vietnam. We spent $40,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia. Oh, $2 million for sex changes. This is body mutilation in Guatemala. $6 million to fund tourism in Egypt. You know, if Egypt wanted to have a tourism industry that thrived, it would be real simple. Just clean the country up. It's just a trash heap. Make it the kind of place that people would want to visit. Get rid of all the Muslim extremists that are looking at every non-Muslim sideways and looking through them. and wondering how they can harm them. Hundreds of thousands of dollars for a non-profit linked to designated terrorist organizations, even after an inspector general launched an investigation. Hundreds of thousands of meals from USAID went to Al-Qaeda affiliated fighters in Syria. Who's behind all this nonsense? Hundreds of millions of dollars to fund irrigation canals, farming equipment, and even fertilizer used to support the unprecedented poppy cultivation, which is heroin production in Afghanistan, which then comes to the United States and kills people. Onward. I'm going to go to page 210 of Climate Cult. By the way, thank you for purchasing your copy. And for those of you who haven't, shame on you. Just go to Amazon.com. This is my chapter. The chapter is called Alternative Fantasies. This is a little section of that chapter called California Dreaming. I'm bringing this up because Donald Trump, God bless him, is deciding to take action and investigate what the heck is going on with the bullet train. I'm going to read portions of this and then I'll expand accordingly. The electric bullet train, that's what they call it here in California, the bullet train, has been in the works since 1996. That was the year the California High-Speed Rail Authority came into fruition. So back in 96, people said, oh, we've got to have a way to get people quickly from San Francisco to Los Angeles. We already have a way to do that quickly. It's called Interstate 5. Works really, really well. If Interstate 5 is a little too fast for you, because people do drive very fast on that road, and there are a lot of trucks, if you don't like that, just go to Highway 101. It's a little bit slower. It's a little prettier. But we have two ways to do this currently. They're highways. They work very, very efficiently. And in the span of less than 4 hours, you can drive from San Francisco down to Los Angeles. 4 to 5 hours, just depending on where you're going. In 2005, an implementation plan was approved, estimating the entire project would take 8 to 11 years to complete. Okay? So then in 2008, there was a voter initiative. I didn't vote for this proposition. I thought it was stupid. I was on the radio in San Francisco at the time. I don't think any of my listeners, loyal listeners, voted for this thing. The proposition was to provide $10 billion to fund a 380-mile high-speed rail line to connect Greater San Francisco to Greater Los Angeles. It was to be completed by 2020 with a total estimate cost of $33 billion. Okay, keep that in mind. This was going to be 380 miles of roadway between San Francisco and Los Angeles. A lot of people going back and forth, a lot of stuff going back and forth on a regular basis. It was going to be completed. We voted on this in 2008. They said it'll be done by 2020. So they were essentially saying, we can do this in 12 years. Keep those figures in mind. In 2012, still wasn't done. Wasn't supposed to be. 2020 was the end date. But in 2012, federal taxpayers put in over $3 billion. This was during the Obama years. After delays and, quite frankly, environmental lawsuits, the train's supporters won a federal exemption from environmental regulations, and finally a groundbreaking ceremony was held. Okay, so this is 2015. They're supposed to be done with this in 5 years. They're finally breaking ground. Where did I say this bullet train was going to run? Yes, from San Francisco to Los Angeles. You want to know where the groundbreaking ceremony was held? Fresno. For those of you who don't know California, Fresno is 200 miles away from the proposed bullet train line. 200 miles away. Jerry Brown was governor. He opened his remarks with a proclamation that was every bit as strange as doing the groundbreaking in Fresno. Here's what he said. This is word for word. I'm sure that some people have read this in Climate Cult and said, oh, there's some typos here, Brian. Where was your editor? No, this is what he said. Now, you think Joe Biden was a little goofy with his speech? You've you've never heard Jerry Brown in a regular day. I don't believe there's anything wrong with him mentally. He his speech patterns and and his ability to leave out words, etc., is ridiculous. Listen to this. We now enter, and he does this with such, he looks magnanimous and very authoritative, and he's a good actor. He really is. He really is. But here's what he said, word for word. We now enter a period of sustained construction on the nation's first high-speed rail system. For the next 5 years in the Central Valley, and for a decade after that across California. This is an investment that will forever improve the way Californians commute, travel, and live. And today is also a celebration of the renewed spirit that built California. Okay, he continued. Listen to this. What is important is the connection that we are rooted in our forebears, and we are committed and linked to our descendants. And the high-speed rail links us from the past to the future, from the south to Fresno and north. This is a truly California project bringing us together today. It's a California project. It is a project that proves we are rooted in our forebears, and we are committed and linked to our descendants. Okay, he makes those comments in 2015. 3 years later, there's a damning audit by the state concluding that flawed decision-making and poor contract management left the rail system 15 years away from completion. Okay, we voted that it would be between San Francisco and Los Angeles. They're out there building in Fresno, and this particular line that they're building in Fresno, which is going to be a little more than 100 miles long, still needs 15 more years. Oh, but even worse. They're saying that segment of it's actually Fresno, Bakersfield, and Chowchilla. Have you ever heard of Chowchilla? Not unless you live in California. There's nothing vital that area would need a high-speed rail. This is farmland. These are farm workers. There's no need for a 171-mile high-speed rail, which by the way, just that little segment, in 2023, they said it was going to be $35 billion. Keep in mind, the entire railway from San Francisco to Los Angeles had a price tag that was less than that. Now they're building this monstrosity out in Chowchilla, and it's going to cost $35 billion. And the entire project, when they're done, linking San Francisco to Los Angeles, would be $128 billion. And to make this work, they were going to need another $100 billion because they're short. State of California is short. State of California has no money, thanks to Gavin Newsom. In 2023, it was announced, oh, wait, we've got some more money coming in. We're going to get $20 million from the Federal Railway Administration. Okay, $20 million for what? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to build a wonderful train depot. We're going to retrofit this building that used to be a railroad administration building in Fresno. We're going to rebuild this. It's going to be a wonderful place where the train's going to come, and it'll look big. $20 million. They don't need it. Can I tell you something? At the end of the day, they're never going to get this thing done. At the end of the day, they've spent all these years in Chowchilla and Fresno and Bakersfield. They've got 60 miles of what they call guideway built. That's it, 60 miles. 60 miles. We have spent tens of billions of dollars for 60 miles of guideway. It's kind of like track. Maybe not completed, but they've got the guideway. And also on top of that, they've got 50 buildings, or 50 structures, I guess you could say, that have been built with this money. Structures could be everything from a bridge to a culvert to an actual depot or something like that. So all this, 10,000 people have worked on this thing, billions and billions and billions of dollars, 60 miles of guideway, and about 50 structures. And that's it. This is the biggest boondoggle, and there have been many, in the state of California's history. And I might add, one of the biggest boondoggles in the history of the United States. So all the more reason for Trump to dig into the details on this and find out where this money's been going, because if it's federal money, there's got to be some accountability here. If it's state money, well, the suckers in California get what they pay for when they elect these ridiculous politicians. But in the meantime, I've been talking about this for years, and there's a lot more in the book, Climate Cult. Friends, I am so pumped up with what's happening with this administration. Donald Trump it's an onslaught of activity that the left doesn't know how to deal with. And instead, what are we getting? We're getting the same things from these people. They don't understand there was a major referendum against their idiocy. Everything from DEI to boys playing women's sports. And it's just crazy because they've got the new reformation taking place in the Democrat Party, and their new deputy, that one young kid, I can't remember his name, last name is Hogg. That kid, 20-something, he has actually convinced the Democrat Party that one of their big issues has to be gun control. Go ahead, keep talking that same old stuff, because if you want to be a party that is absolutely out of touch with the American people, keep going down those roads for such a time as this. And I will just say to my Christian brother and sister who's not supporting Donald Trump, for my Christian brother or sister who really wishes that she would have won the election, I'm not sure exactly where Donald Trump is with his faith. I'm not going to judge one way or the other, but I'm just telling you, this is the most pro-life president we have ever seen. And if nothing else, Christian, brother, sister, you need to think twice and support this guy, if for no other reason, for the issue of life. And also the issue of sanity when it comes to the genders. In the beginning, he made them male and female. So God bless you, my friends. Let's take advantage of the opportunities before us to be able to speak from our hearts, proclaim the gospel of Jesus Christ without fear of consequences. You know, with the old administration, the Democrat administration, you've got to worry about what you say because it could be deemed offensive. But now you can actually walk through the parking lot of a Planned Parenthood and sing praises to the Lord, and you don't have to worry about getting thrown in prison for it, because that really has happened. God bless you, my friends. Until next time, and don't forget my book, Climate Cult, my website, briansussman.com, Facebook, Brian Sussman Show. God bless you.